Here we have the Razer Kiyo Pro. Razer finally ditched that ring light and now has shifted its focus towards pro specs for this model, or so they say. Now Razer hasn't given us a new webcam since 2017 when the original Razer Kiyo came out. Which, by the way, thank you for all of the support that you guys gave me on my original Razer Kiyo review. You guys absolutely loved it. You ranked it #1 on YouTube. Can't thank you guys enough. Over the past year, nothing's really changed. I'm still a gamer and a tech junkie, and I've had this thing in my hands for almost a week now trying to make sense of its $200 price tag. Instead of a ring light, the Kiyo Pro is now focusing its energy towards using a Sony CMOS sensor found in security cameras to give us that quality boost, which I'll be the judge of. The idea is to use the 2.0 aperture as a tool to adjust the lighting in the setup, making sure your shot is well lit without the need of a ring light. Now this isn't exactly accurate because even though the aperture is lower, allowing more light to come in and hit the sensor, making your image look a little bit less grainy and more crisp, you're still going to need lighting, which you don't have that ring light anymore, so keep that in mind. Without lighting, you'd need a camera like a Sony a7S III, which is made for low light videography, paired with a lens with a low aperture like I'm using right now, to get that sort of an image in lower light scenarios. That's a setup that will cost you over $5,000. I don't expect this webcam to come close to that, but I do expect it to be somewhere in the ballpark of the new Avermedia webcam we reviewed here on the channel a few weeks ago. The $200 price tag makes it double the price of the original Kiyo. You do get some new features with the Pro, now sporting 1080p and 60 FPS, and an adjustable field of view with HDR. Most of the features are buried deep in the Synapse software, which I personally feel shouldn't have to be that way. So for the sake of this video, we will be comparing it first with its quality strictly plug and play before we cover its quality with the Synapse software. For design, it's got a nice solid build to its frame. It feels good in your hands and has a nice premium feel to it despite using plastic instead of metal for the structure. The webcam itself is connected to a monitor mount through a thread screw, which is perfect seeing how not everyone needs to mount this directly to a monitor. Some gamers or people in meetings might need it on a tripod because of the way their setup is organized, making this super convenient for a wide variety of scenarios. The mount itself swivels completely downward and did have a tilt of about 5 degrees when you move it the opposite way. The screw holding the camera to the mount lets you easily adjust and twist the camera if you have it set up on a nearby monitor or a tripod instead of directly in front of you for more added convenience. Also, if needed, you could go ahead and just tighten the thread screw on the bottom for added security and a tighter fit. The Kiyo Pro connects to your setup through a USB Type-C cable that comes in at almost 60 inches in length, which I absolutely love. Having a USB Type-C and a long enough cable for setups is a must in 2021, especially for gamers and streamers. When you're not using the Kiyo, it does have a separate cover, which I probably won't ever use, and you also have an LED that turns on at the top of the webcam when it is in use. The same circular design is still here without the ring light. You also have an omnidirectional mic, which sounds just as bad as most other webcams that have that feature, so I wouldn't really recommend it. Stick with one of the USB mics I've recommended here on the channel over the past year instead. The original Kiyo had an 81-degree field of view, which isn't the best. Gamers and streamers need that wider field of view. Luckily, with the new Kiyo Pro, just like the Avermedia camera we reviewed, now has a 94-degree field of view. Here, I've added the new Razer Kiyo into the mix of my previous review, and you can see how that field of view actually plays out. Now, unlike the Avermedia camera, this doesn't support 4K. It's a 1080p resolution. I'm pretty sure we've had 8K on camera phones for over a year now. Why should a consumer in 2021 spend double the price of the original Razer Kiyo for a slightly better sensor and a slightly wider field of view? Think about that for a second. I feel like 4K should have been the standard in 2019, let alone 2021. You're giving us that same 1080p resolution, now in 60 FPS, which I could care less about 60 FPS when I'm gaming because I'm not jumping up and down in my seat. I'm sitting pretty much in the same spot. So 60 FPS isn't really necessary when you're filming. Most Hollywood films are shot in 24 FPS. I'm shooting this in 30 FPS. Why should a consumer spend double the price of the original Razer Kiyo? Before I jump the gun here, let's go ahead and take it up to the game room and test it out versus the other webcams. Alright guys, so now we're up here in the game room, and currently you guys are watching me on the Sony a7S II with a 20mm f1.8 lens. It's a much more expensive setup. It's set up in manual focus, and I have the 3 webcams right next to it. So what we're going to do first is go ahead and test out all these webcams along with the Sony in a 4-layer box in low light scenarios, and then we'll add some lighting and go from there with the testing. Alright guys, so here's our first test. This is going to be the low light, somewhat low light test. There isn't any lighting used aside from what's coming from the monitors right now. It isn't terrible, and it's not exactly dark outside right now, so when it gets darker at night, it's going to be way worse. But I wanted to do this now here with you guys with the default settings on all these cameras. We have the Sony a7S II with the 20mm f1.8 lens, which is the one, obviously it looks like night and day compared to the other webcams. In the bottom here, under that camera, we have the Razer Kiyo, the original. Right next to it, we have the Razer Kiyo Pro. And above that, we have the Logitech C920E webcam. C930 or C920E webcam. It will be linked down below for you guys. But this is what the webcams look like. First test I like doing is just some hand movement to see how much lag you get. So you can see with the original Razer Kiyo and the Logitech webcam, you get a lot more lag. The new Razer Kiyo webcam The Pro doesn't look that bad. And then obviously the Sony, it's in a class of its own. But this is what it looks like with all 4 cameras without any lighting added to any scenario. Let's turn on the ring light on the Razer Kiyo and see what happens here. So we turn on the Razer Kiyo ring light, and it needs some adjusting. Like I said, these are all the default settings. Let's add some more lighting here and turn off the Razer Kiyo ring light because I feel like that isn't the best ring light. Let's go ahead and add some more lighting so we can see how it would look like and how it'll affect the movements when I'm doing my testing. Alright, so here we are. I have some light beaming off the ceiling here. As you guys can see, the Razer Kiyo, the original one, is overcompensated in terms of its color temperature and lighting, which needs to be fixed. The Sony a7S II I had to dial back because it was bringing in too much light. The Razer Kiyo Pro, as you guys can see, looks about the same. Doesn't look terrible. And then you have the Logitech camera, which looks a little bit better than before. Now, one thing I will say that I don't like about the Razer Kiyo Pro is the focus hunting that you get. It feels like the lens is always zooming in and out. It's always looking for you, even when you're in a stationary position, which is something that I absolutely hate. I hate focus hunting more than anything when it comes to cameras. This is what it looks like. Camera movements. Looks like the Logitech is still behind in terms of camera movements. The Razer Kiyo, kind of the same. The Kiyo Pro, fine, but you can see the focus hunting that it's doing now with my hand and my face. It's not recognizing your eyes or anything, which I don't really expect that from a webcam, but something worth mentioning. Now, I don't have the Avermedia webcam anymore, but I will throw up a previous video that I did when I compared the Avermedia to the Kiyo, the Sony a7S II, and the Logitech camera, so you guys can get an idea. I'll throw that Razer Kiyo Pro in there in the mix. In terms of hand movements, you guys can see it's fluid. Obviously, it's not bad. But when you look at the Avermedia webcam, it's as close as you'll probably get to a much more expensive mirrorless camera like the Sony a7S II. Also, in lower light situations, the Avermedia camera is much better than these other webcams. We'll throw up here at the same time some lower light situations. As you guys are noticing, that Razer Kiyo Pro is focus hunting. As soon as I put my arm right around here, even when I'm not and I'm just moving my face around, it's focus hunting, which I can't stand. But you'll notice, even with the Razer Kiyo Pro having that 94-degree field of view, the same as the Avermedia looks much wider thanks to its different sensor. Now, with the Avermedia camera, obviously, there's pretty much no lag, even in lower light situations, and that webcam only costs $50 more than the Razer Kiyo Pro, and you also get 4K video quality, which, with the Razer Kiyo Pro, you're still stuck in 1080p. Let me know down below in the comment section, aside from the Sony, which one of these webcams you think looks the best. Personally, for me, it's still the Avermedia webcam. That's the one I would go with. But the Razer Kiyo Pro, it's not bad. You definitely see somewhat of an upgrade from the original Razer Kiyo right next to it in terms of quality. Now, I try to go into every review with no assumptions about anything, a clear mind. At the same time, when I saw 1080p and it's 2021, I thought to myself, all right, now I'm going to start picking apart everything else that's wrong with this camera, if there is anything. First, the software. The Razer Synapse software has always been buggy for me. Always. No matter what I did. Every time I log in, it's asking me to sign up for this, sign up for that. It's just a headache. Someone who's running around doing meetings and stuff like that, the last thing they want to do is go ahead and have to set up software to get the full functionality out of the webcam and make it look somewhat decent. You know what I mean? That's my point of view on stuff. People are busy nowadays. It's 2021. Everyone's in a society where everyone's like running around. There's not a second to spare, even if it's setting up software. It's quite annoying. But if you look at the software itself, we'll go into the Razer Kiyo Pro now. We'll go into the advanced settings here. And we'll start messing around. You have your brightness, obviously, you can play with and stuff like that. I want to turn on the low light compensation. See, now it's overpowered. And you see the focus hunting kick in again. Turn off the low light compensation and goes right back to it. We'll leave it at that. Let's go ahead and do this. Let's turn it off in OBS and turn it on in the software so we can play with the settings there. And here we have the Razer Synapse software bugging out again. Can't even enable the preview. Let me unplug the camera and plug it back in. See what I'm talking about in terms of it being buggy and always causing problems. At the top, you have your image where you can change the color temperature, brightness, contrast, saturation, white balance. These are the settings that you have in here. Let's go into the advanced settings. It brings up the same settings that I was able to access from OBS. Aside from the same settings that you get in OBS, you can go ahead and adjust the focus and set up manual focus instead of using autofocus with this camera, which is one way to avoid the focus hunting or breathing that you get with the Razer Kiyo Pro. We'll leave it on manual focus for right now. Let's go ahead and set up a wider field of view. Oh, it was already set up on wide. So here's its wide setting.
It's not exactly as wide as you need it to be. And it doesn't look anywhere near the 94-degree field of view that you get with the Avermedia webcam. Now, for it being 2021 and this being a $200 webcam, you shouldn't have to depend on the Razer Synapse software to make it look a little bit better and somewhat decent. The camera looks somewhat decent right out of the box, but there's no reason to really use the Razer Synapse software and backlog your PC unless you plan on using it for manual focus, so you can avoid that focus hunting that you experience with this webcam. Why open up both OBS and Razer Synapse when you could just use pretty much OBS Studio to adjust your brightness, contrast, and that kind of stuff? It doesn't make sense. Not everyone has time to go ahead and do this and set it up, especially with how buggy the Razer Synapse software is. I've never had a good experience with it, and that's why I don't plan on using it.
Here's the bottom line. If you already have a Razer Kiyo or a C930, I would not upgrade to this webcam. If I had 200 bucks, I would find an extra $50 and buy the Avermedia webcam hands down. For me, it's not even a question. Spend $100 on one of those beginner webcams and spend $100 on a decent mic before you drop $200 on the Razer Kiyo Pro. Here's the thing, people. Let's get straight to the point. I can't justify that $200 price tag. I can't recommend it. I really can't. No 4K video quality, 200 bucks for the same webcam without a ring light, slightly better sensor, and slightly wider field of view. It doesn't make sense. I'm a streamer, I'm a content creator, I'm someone who uses webcams and expensive camera equipment all the time. I feel like you'd be much better off spending the extra $50 and picking up the Avermedia webcam instead. Now, if the price drops to 150 bucks, then maybe I'd consider it. Either way, links will be down below for you guys for all these webcams if you want to purchase any one of them and support the channel at the same time with no extra cost to you. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure you smash that like button for me and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in my next episode. Peace.